all need to make smart decisions with our money. The Long-Term Investor Podcast shows you how by distilling complex financial matters into easily digestible lessons. And now, here's your host, Chief Investment Officer at PlanCorp and the author of Making Money Simple, Peter Lazaroff.
In the spring of 1804, Meriwether Lewis stood at the edge of America as he knew it and peered into the darkness. President Thomas Jefferson had given him an extraordinary command: cross the vast, unmapped continent and find a route to the Pacific Ocean. Beyond the Mississippi River lay a vast unknown. At the time, maps were vague, marked only with cryptic notes about deserts, rumored snow-capped mountains, and rivers winding mysteriously into uncertainty. Lewis had no guarantees of success, but he understood something crucial. Incomplete maps weren't worthless. For months, he is said to have studied historical accounts from fur traders, missionary notes, and Native American guides. Individually, these stories offered little clarity, but together, they provided invaluable insights. When Lewis and his partner, William Clark, launched their expedition up the Missouri River, they carried these fragments of historical knowledge with them. They knew earlier explorations had often ended disastrously, whether it was from starvation, violence, and confusion. Those were just some of the common fates of those who had ventured blindly. The critical difference between success and tragedy, Lewis believed, hinged on learning from past experiences. Ultimately, their meticulous preparation paid off, and after 2 grueling years and thousands of miles, Lewis and Clark reached the Pacific Ocean, returning home with unprecedented geographic knowledge and astonishingly precise maps. Remarkably, they only lost one man due to illness rather than a misstep, whereas previous expeditions often suffered devastating losses. Lewis and Clark's success wasn't luck. It was the transformation of historical insight into wisdom. And as investors, we stand on a similar frontier of uncertainty. The financial markets stretch before us, full of promise but fraught with hidden dangers. Just as Lewis and Clark navigated their journey, guided by historical lessons, investors can use history as a map to illuminate patterns, identify pitfalls, and manage inevitable uncertainties. That's why I dedicated a full chapter to history in my upcoming book, The Perfect Portfolio. By gaining an understanding of history, along with the evidence-based strategies and fundamentals of behavioral finance, you can learn how to build a portfolio uniquely tailored to your needs. And when I read through that chapter recently in the editing process, there were 5 things that stood out to me. But before I share those, I want to encourage you to sign up for exclusive early excerpts, valuable updates, and special content related to the book by visiting theperfectportfoliobook.com. And you can also look for the link at the top of this episode's description in your podcast app. You won't want to miss the next email because it's going to provide an early look at the cover designs, and I'm actually going to let you all vote for which one is your favorite, and that is the one I'm going to choose. So again, check that out, theperfectportfoliobook.com. And now, let's dive into those 5 big lessons I believe history offers investors who are trying to build their perfect portfolio. First, I noticed financial markets move predictably through cycles of exuberance and despair. Each generation faces its speculative manias, from tulip bulbs in Amsterdam to internet stocks in the Silicon Valley. Wise investors recognize these cycles and remain cautious when enthusiasm becomes excessive. Second, financial innovations frequently emerge, promising easier paths to wealth, but also amplifying risks. And history is full of such innovations, from maritime loans in ancient Greece to mortgage-backed securities in recent decades. Investors always must thoughtfully assess new financial products rather than blindly embracing them. Third, extreme valuations eventually confront reality. Time after time, investors convince themselves that certain assets justify any price, whether it's the Nifty 50 of the 1970s or technology stocks in the 1990s. History teaches us that irrational pricing never lasts and valuation always matters. Fourth, normal market volatility is not something to fear. It's simply the price of wealth accumulation. Regular downturns and corrections, even the significant ones, are pretty routine when you start looking through history closely, and they are necessary for achieving those long-term returns that will meaningfully outpace inflation without taking undue risk. Because market volatility doesn't fall into that bucket of undue risk. It is, again, just simply the cost of admission for higher expected returns. Finally, and perhaps most crucially, successful investing isn't primarily about the markets. It's actually about managing your own emotions. Headlines and narratives trigger fear and greed, which can lead investors astray, and history consistently shows that disciplined investors who mastered their emotions achieved the best outcomes. Remember, every crisis feels unique in the moment, but history proves that markets recover, progress persists, and disciplined investors inevitably succeed. Thanks for listening, and again, be sure to sign up for those updates at theperfectportfoliobook.com. And until next time, to long-term investing.
Thanks for listening to the Long-Term Investor Podcast. To access free financial resources and submit questions to be answered on the show, visit thelongterminvestor.com. Peter Lazaroff is an employee of PlanCorp and BrightPlan. All opinions expressed by Peter and any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of PlanCorp or BrightPlan. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Clients of PlanCorp and BrightPlan may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.